Today, Leica is one of the most recognizable names in photography. Its cameras have photographed wars, revolutions, street life, and some of the most important moments of the 20th century. But there's another part of Leica's history that has very little to do with photography. It's the story of how the family behind Leica used their company, their money, and their international business connections to help people escape Nazi Germany. And for decades, relatively few people knew much about it. The man at the center of the story was Ernst Leitz II. To understand what happened, we need to go back to Wetzlar, Germany. The company that would eventually become synonymous with Leica cameras began as an optical manufacturer. Then came engineer Oskar Barnack. Barnack experimented with using 35mm cinema film for still photography, creating a small camera that exposed a frame measuring 24 by 36mm. The idea eventually became the Leica. When the Leica 1 entered series production in 1925, photography was still dominated by much larger cameras. The Leica was different. It was compact, precise, and easy to carry. Photographers could take it onto streets and into situations where larger cameras were cumbersome. Over the following years, Leica developed into one of Germany's most internationally respected photographic products, and the man running the company was Ernst Leitz II. But Germany itself was changing. In January 1933, Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany. Very quickly, Germany's Jewish population began facing increasing persecution. Jewish people were removed from professions, businesses were targeted, civil rights disappeared, and eventually the Nuremberg laws institutionalized racial discrimination. For Jewish employees, associates, and families connected to Leitz, leaving Germany became increasingly urgent. Ernst Leitz II was not Jewish. That distinction gave him freedoms that his Jewish employees and acquaintances increasingly didn't have. And Leitz also had something enormously useful: an international company. Leitz had business operations and connections outside Germany that created a possible route out. Leitz began helping endangered people leave Germany. Some were genuine employees. Others could be trained or employed by Leitz and then presented as workers being transferred to company operations overseas. On paper, this could look like ordinary international business. A German employee was simply being assigned to work somewhere else. But for some of those people, that overseas assignment was an escape. Leitz provided training, letters of recommendation, and financial assistance. Destinations included Britain, France, and other countries, but one of the most important destinations was the United States. Those arriving in New York could be connected with the Leitz operation there and helped while establishing a new life. Some were provided with employment. Others received assistance finding work elsewhere in the photographic industry. According to Leica's own historical account, Leitz funded journeys and supported people after their arrival. And there's a particularly appropriate detail for a camera company. Some of the people leaving Germany were given Leica cameras. A Leica was already an expensive and desirable object. For someone beginning a new life in another country, it could potentially be sold for money or help them find work in photography. The operation wasn't formally called the Leica Freedom Train at the time. That name came later. And despite the name, this wasn't necessarily a literal train carrying refugees across Germany. It was more like a network, a company quietly using employment, overseas assignments, money, and international connections to create exits from an increasingly dangerous country. Some individual stories have survived. One was Robert Sternberg. Because he was Jewish, Sternberg was prevented from pursuing his studies. Leitz trained him and helped him reach England. Sternberg later became involved in the British photographic industry and worked on the Ilford Witness camera. Another was Kurt Rosenberg. Leitz arranged employment for Rosenberg, a mechanic, at the company's New York Leica showroom. Rosenberg escaped Germany, later joined the United States Army, and was killed in action in 1944. These weren't simply names being moved around a company ledger. They were people whose lives could be changed by a job offer, a recommendation, or a ticket out of Germany. And the operation became increasingly important as conditions deteriorated. After the violence of Kristallnacht in November 1938, the urgency became even greater. But helping people escape was also becoming increasingly dangerous. The Nazi authorities weren't completely unaware of what was happening. In 1938, Leitz sales manager Alfred Tweck was arrested after assisting Jewish emigrants with letters of recommendation to the company's New York operation. And Leitz wasn't the only member of his family taking risks. His daughter, Elsie Kuhn Leitz, also helped people persecuted by the regime. Her actions eventually brought the danger directly to the family. In 1943, after helping a Jewish woman, Elsie was arrested by the Gestapo. She was imprisoned in Frankfurt for several months. Her father eventually managed to secure her release. By this point, however, the escape network that had operated before the war was no longer possible in the same way. Once war began in September 1939 and Germany's borders effectively closed, getting people safely overseas became vastly more difficult. There's another important part of this story. Leitz was still a major German industrial company operating under the Nazi regime. During the war, German industry was increasingly directed toward military production, and Leitz manufactured optical equipment for the German war effort. In 1942, Ernst Leitz also joined the Nazi Party. That fact can seem difficult to reconcile with the story of him helping people persecuted by the Nazis. But surviving documentation portrays his position as complicated. Leitz had to protect a strategically important company, its employees, and his family, while operating inside a dictatorship that could take control of businesses it considered important. This doesn't make every decision beyond criticism, but it does make the story more interesting than a simple tale of heroes and villains. While his factories operated inside Nazi Germany, Leitz and members of his company were simultaneously helping people targeted by that regime, and they were taking genuine personal risks to do it. Perhaps the strangest part is how little Ernst Leitz talked about it afterwards. He died in 1956. For decades, the rescue effort remained relatively obscure. Later research, including work by Rabbi Frank Dabba Smith and German historians, brought much more attention to what had happened. The exact number of people who should be counted as having been rescued or assisted varies depending on how the assistance is defined. Historical research cited in biographies of Leitz identifies 86 people who received significant assistance or whose lives were saved between 1933 and 1945, including 68 persecuted on racial grounds, most of them Jewish. Other popular accounts have used larger estimates when including families and people connected to the wider network. That's why it's safer not to reduce this story to a dramatic headline claiming that Leica secretly saved a specific enormous number of people. What we can say with much greater confidence is that Ernst Leitz, his family, and people within the company repeatedly used the resources available to them to help persecuted people. Leica became famous because its cameras allowed photographers to document the 20th century. They recorded ordinary life. They recorded famous people. And they recorded the rise of fascism, war, and the Holocaust. But behind the company making those cameras was another story that wasn't being photographed. People were being trained. Employment papers were being prepared. Recommendations were written. Tickets were purchased. And people who were increasingly trapped inside Nazi Germany were being given a way out. Today, the story is often called the Leica Freedom Train, but there wasn't one train. There wasn't one dramatic rescue. It was a series of decisions made repeatedly over several years by people who understood that something terrible was happening around them and realized that the company they controlled gave them an unusual ability to help. For a company famous for documenting history, this may be one of the most important parts of its own history.